guys ready for some football? I'm going to talk about the NFL. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. I'm not going to talk about the NFL. I'm not. Because you've heard enough of it already, and I think it's just pandering to what's popular right now. It's the end of September, and it's a beautiful time of year where I'm from, where I grew up in Wisconsin. But it's also a beautiful time of year here in Hanoi because it's actually starting to cool down a little bit. And all the torrential rain has sort of died down. That we put up with that through the later part of the summer, so it's kind of neat. As my second year here, I really see the difference. But anyway, you all have your own opinions about football, and you've all heard enough of it already. But it's an interesting distraction. I mean, to segue, that Trump picks on the NFL just like he picked on the Pope and other celebrities, and it's really quite ridiculous, just the way he contorts and manipulates the media. But, I'm still on his side because he's in support of free speech, and he certainly exercises that right, even if one could argue that he is suppressing it, at least for the legacy media, which is totally biased and controlled anyway. Okay, so with that out of the way, I wanted to talk about the escalating situation in North Korea. And, for the first time since the war ended, well, the war didn't end, but it came to an armistice in 1953. For the first time since then, we have American planes flying over the DMZ, which is pretty shocking. And, like I said, Kim Jong-un isn't doing shit. And I think, well, just like picking on the Pope in the NFL, the president came out strongly against the UN, wondering why they haven't done anything and what effectively is a large concentration camp. Why, after kidnapping and enslaving a Japanese girl, one of many, and kidnapping and terrorizing and assassinating South Koreans and Americans, as we know, the earliest example being Otto Warmbier. So, rather than continuing to test missiles, I think that the Kims are backing down. But this puts us in a precarious situation. I mean, the whole thing, as I think Ben Shapiro put it, the situation in Korea is a comedy of errors that goes back to foreign policy we had in the 1930s and 40s that we didn't, or our whole response to communism around the world. In general, you could argue that it was poor, but I mean that hindsight is 2020. I mean, who are we to judge those decisions? But the fact is, right now we are dealing with a rogue pariah nation that is getting closer and closer to having a nuclear arsenal that threatens, even the American mainland, which is pretty terrifying. But I think Kim is listening, and he knows what's up, and because of that, I pray and I hope and I sincerely believe in continued propaganda from South Korea and from Japan and from China and from the US and from everywhere, where we are showing them K-pop, we are showing them Gangnam Style, we are showing them just the insane plethora of delicious junk foods and snacks and treats that they have in Korea that have been exported all over the world now. We show them Christianity that doesn't have the state's nose in it. I think they would like that a lot. It's the same, they're just as zealous with the Christian faith, evangelical Protestant faith in South Korea, as these the few public speakers in North Korea are about Juche, their special blend of communism that they want to spread to all of Korea. But I'm not paranoid about that. I don't think it will get to the point where they have those bombs, but in fact there might be some military action necessary, and this is maybe the only time since I've been around to understand what wars were and what was going on in places like here, Vietnam, and in Iraq, places like that. But I actually see this as, in some bizarre way, I think it's morally justified, because the longer we wait, I think the worse the situation will get. Unless there's some panacea, some cure-all that will happen in the future, some change of events, or if the regime gets toppled from the inside. Now, it's considered, I saw it written as a communist monarchy once, which appropriately describes it, because it's all in the family line of the Kims now. Just as in some ways, other countries, my own included, you know, we have relatives getting elected and stuff like that. But one of the great miracles of Trump is he put an end to that, at least for the time being. So my prediction is that they will cease producing weapons, and that's going to cause a lot of, or at least testing weapons, and that's going to cause a lot of turmoil for the Kims, and it's also going to it's going to cause a lot of executions and a lot more torture of their own people. Because like I said, what happened to Otto Warmbier, that's just par for the course. That's what happens to citizens in North Korea. I remember I was living in South Korea during the 2008 World Cup in South Africa, and I watched a lot of the games. And I remember a news story back then of the North Korean team wanting to defect. And none of the world would allow that. Nobody was willing to take them. And so they got sent home and put into gulags, and their whole families, I think the rule is for 3 generations were put in gulags. So I really think that we need to shut down this concentration camp that is North Korea. But it's a bad situation no matter how you look at it, and any solution is just going to resort in more terror, you know. These people are in prison. And yet, you know, people praise Kim Jong-il unironically, or maybe ironically online, just like they praise the Saudis. Oh, they're the ones giving women rights now. I wish we had the Saudi leader. Women allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia. Okay, fine. I think they've been pressing for that for a long time. I think women have only recently been allowed to vote. So it is changing, and I think that that's the economy's pull. Because given our political history with Saudi Arabia, and given the sharp contrast between our cultures, it's surprising that we exchange so much money. But that's what it is, you know, we're just filling pockets. And politics is like making making sausage, in that it's disgusting. But I don't know, sausage is okay. Summer barbecues, all that. How much time? Okay, 8 minutes. So all I can say is that the NFL thing is a great diversion, and I'm kind of embarrassed by how people have responded to it. But it's also kind of fun, and it's also kind of nationalistic. The guy who burned all his stuff on YouTube is going to get more hits with that one little video than probably my whole channel this year. Not that I care. I'm just saying. It's just, and I love it too. I love it that some guy can just burn his stuff and get famous that way. That's amazing. That's awesome. That's free speech right there, and that's them using the free speech. What do you call those? Axiom? No. What's the word? Rule, protocol. The rule that the NFL needs to be boycotted because these black men who make millions and millions of dollars every year are taking the knee to the flag, which is itself an American act, and I don't think anyone should make a big deal over it. But it's also part of everything is so steeped in symbolism. You know, I wish I could go back to the States for just a few weeks and get a sense of what people are really talking about and thinking, because it's just so seeped in team worship and celebrity worship and following one celebrity bashing another, because that's what it is. You know, like Trump is the superstar president, really. But while that fun is happening, and while people, astonishingly, a lot of people I know have just given up on watching football, which is kind of weird growing up in Wisconsin, because it's just like a rule there. Even if you don't like it, you watch it. I mean, it's part of it's part of the national spotlight on a very kind of, I don't know, remote place, I guess I would put it. Feels like big cities when I think about it right now, but it's all relative. Trump makes me allergic. Oh, by the way, I finished reading The Big Lie by Dinesh D'Souza, and as soon as I sit down and go through my highlighted parts and take just a few notes, because I want to give a fair assessment of the book, even though, I'm not going to put as much effort as I put into Dangerous. And it wasn't as good as Dangerous, but it was still an interesting read, and he still makes a few really good points. But I also got a copy of What Happened by Hillary, and I started reading that, and it's farcical. It seems like someone else wrote it for her as a joke. It's sort of it's just so weird. It's completely lacking in self-awareness. And it kind of gives me the impression, as I got during the election, that Hillary is kind of a drunk, and that would also explain why she didn't give a speech at the end. Because even if she hadn't had one written, like she and her team could have thrown something together if she was able to walk and stand up, which I know is kind of mean to say because it's a serious illness, but. Donald Trump, in The Art of the Deal, which I also read, he says that he had a very ambitious, very hardworking, very creative older brother who died because he drank too much, and that's why Donald Trump, just like I think it's W, and well, Obama likes beer. I'm pretty sure Bill drinks, but he's one of the teetotaler presidents. He doesn't touch the stuff. Not because he was nicknamed Gin and Tonic like W was back in Texas. But that, my friends, is another story. So we'll say goodbye. How does the song go? We'll say goodbye when the day is through, and I'll have more ideas for you, and you'll have things you'd like to talk about. I will too.